Hey boys and girls, how are you all? We are going to do a little lesson today, a little mock fossil dig. I love fossils, as you could probably tell from last week. And so we're going to pretend like we are out on a fossil dig here in Kentucky, and we're going to see and learn about what our ecosystem was a long time ago. We know right now that our ecosystem that we live in is a deciduous forest in which the trees lose their leaves and we go through the seasons, and that affects the type of animals and plant life we have here. So we're going to dig back into some of Kentucky's history and do a fossil dig. So as you can see, I've got stuff to take notes on the board. If you were here with me, you'd be taking these notes. So I'm going to give you all just a minute to make sure you've got your paper and something to write with so you can do some of these notes with me. Okay? Make sure you're getting your paper. Make sure you've got something to write with too. Okay, let's assume that you've got it and you all are back. So the top layer that we'll be digging in, remember that would have to be our youngest layer because it had to have formed last to be on the top of the soil around here. And then when we get to the middle layer, that's got to be older because it formed before the top layer. And then the layer that we'll get to at the bottom, called the Paleozoic era, it has to be our oldest because it's down at the bottom. It had to have formed first. So the first layer we'll get to is actually our youngest. So if you want to write, you don't have to write Cenozoic, but if you want to write youngest to help you remember, and write top layer on your paper, and then you can make your T-chart, and your middle layer would be kind of the middle age. And then do another line down on your paper. And you can turn your paper long ways too if you want, like this way. That's easier. And then the bottom layer, make sure you don't have to write Paleozoic, but if you want to write Paleozoic, you can. But make sure you put that it's the bottom layer and for sure that it's the oldest. Okay? Give me just a second to do that. And if you're not quite finished doing that, I'm going to kind of bend down and pretend like I'm digging, and I would have to use I'd have to be very gentle in my way I dig because these fossils are thousands, if not millions of years old, and we don't want to disturb something that is just so old. So you finish writing that, and I'm going to dig right here, and you all can see that. I'm digging. All right, so the first fossil that I pull up looks like this. Now from last week when I showed you, that kind of reminds you of that amber that I showed you that forms, if you remember, from tree sap. And that has to be smaller animals that would get trapped in the tree sap. So does this remind you of kind of like a dragonfly, possibly? It looks big because I've got the picture really zoomed in so that you could see it well, but I think that that's definitely a dragonfly. So this is fossil O. We're going to label it fossil O. So on my top layer in the Cenozoic period, I'm going to go fossil O. I don't have to write fossil, I just have it as O. And we're going to put, this is going to give me clues about what our ecosystem was like. We're going to put amber, because we know what type of fossil it is, and we're going to write dash dragonfly. Now we have trees that make sap here now, and we also have dragonflies that live around here. So right now I'm thinking maybe it's an ecosystem very similar to ours, but I don't want to go ahead and say that that is the ecosystem that we have because I've only got one piece of evidence. And I need at least 3 or 4 pieces of evidence, and it's more fun to dig and find more fossils anyway. So let me dig some more. And look what I have found. Maybe this reminds you of the fossil that I showed you last week that looks like this. It looks like just a piece of wood, but when I tap it, you can tell that it's solid rock. This is called petrified wood, and there's a lot of petrified wood in this area, in this fossil dig that we've done. So this is called fossil F. So in our notes up here, so that we don't forget when we get back to our lab with our fossils, what layer we found and what it was. Let's write fossil F, and we've got petrified wood, and it's very big. So I'm going to put that it's big pieces. Okay? Still, amber, petrified wood. I mean, you would assume that you would have trees if you're going to have amber, so that's not a real big shock, but it's still telling me that since there's a lot, it might have been a forested type of area. They're very big trees, and so that could tell me that there's plenty of either rain or snowfall in the area. So let's go ahead and continue digging and see what other fossil we can find, see if it gives us some more clues on the environment, what it was like around here several thousand years ago. Dig, dig, dig. And this time, I've pulled out this fossil. We've got our first animal fossil. And these bones are huge. And look at the teeth here. At home, I don't know if you can tell or not, but those are grinder teeth. They're not sharp, so we're not looking at a carnivore, we're looking at a herbivore. And that is as big as my foot. So this is a very large animal. And then there's a tusk coming down and very large leg bones and rib bones. Maybe it reminds you of this fossil that I showed you last week of the woolly mammoth hair. The tusks on this thing are bigger than an elephant, so we would assume that fossil J, I believe I have there. Fossil, nope, that's fossil L. I was trying to look through the paper to see it. Fossil L, we can write as a woolly mammoth. Now I know that we had trees, large trees that produced sap, and I've got a woolly mammoth. Okay, so woolly mammoth would have been in a much colder environment than what we have now. And these very large trees now I can assume were probably some sort of evergreen tree, since it would have had to have been a lot colder. Woolly mammoths lived kind of right below where the ice age, where the ice from the glacier stopped, so maybe we're right at the edge of where glaciers were. Let's go ahead and dig and get at least one more for good evidence and try to guess what kind of ecosystem this is. So dig, dig, dig. This one has some sharp teeth and a head that's kind of shaped like other cats that I have seen. What does that remind you of? Yes, it reminds me of a saber-toothed tiger as well. And we know that those were alive during a colder time frame. So that was fossil C. Now we're going to put saber-toothed tiger. Now from these 4 pieces of evidence of fossils, I'm going to assume this was a pretty healthy environment because we have plant eaters and we have carnivores. We've got trees, we've got insects that can help to pollinate. So I'm going to assume that this is a cold forest right below glaciers. Okay, What do you all think? Would you agree with me? I hope so. So now we're ready to go to our middle layer, the Mesozoic era. I wonder what we'll find there. What was Kentucky like then? Okay. So I'm going to dig. Are you ready to see what we're going to find in here? This should be pretty cool. Okay, and I forgot to bring this one up here with me, but maybe this reminds you of a fossil that I showed you last week of a seashell. And this seashell is in limestone. Okay, so I am going to write down fossil N. Seashell in limestone. And if you can remember from the type of fossil that we have, that is an imprint. So I'm going to write that it's an imprint fossil. Ooh, need an N there. Okay, now, can we assume that it was a sea since it's a seashell? Not necessarily yet. What if we're at the edge of a sea? Or something like that. So let's go ahead and keep digging and see what else we can find. Dig. Look at those teeth. Look at that powerful jaw and the eyes facing forward. What do you think we have here? Yes, for sure it's some type of carnivore, and probably some of you all are thinking that it's a type of T-Rex, and it might be, or it might be a velociraptor, I'm not sure, but it's definitely some sort of meat eater, okay? So we're going to put fossil H, and we're going to put carnivore, large carnivore. And if you remember from last week, this is definitely a cast fossil. Okay? Now let's dig some more. And I've got a plant fossil here. What does that remind you of? It reminds me of something that it reminds me of like Easter time. When I'm at church and we're studying when Jesus rode in on the donkey right before the week, and they have a palm leaf where they were laying the palm leaf stem. That is definitely a palm leaf, and it's a large palm leaf. So now we know, and palm trees are found where? Do we have those normally in Kentucky? No. Do they grow in more tropical areas near a beach? So maybe it wasn't covered by a whole sea, but maybe it was at the edge of some kind of sea. So that was fossil E. And does it remind you of this fossil right here? Of this fern? It does me too, of like a carbon imprint. So we've got a carbon imprint of a palm leaf. All right, let's dig some more. And here I have a footprint, some imprint fossils. All go in the same direction. I know that you can see these really well on your screen. Those. I don't know if you can see some of these other ones that are the same way. So if they're headed towards the same area, which they are, is where the seashell was, we know that it is some sort of group of animals that are traveling probably to a food source or maybe even a water source. Now I guess since we can see their imprints that it was probably kind of damp in this area, so it probably is a water source that they are all headed towards. So this is fossil K. And we're going to call it imprint feet, all going in the same direction. So from these, I know that there is definitely water source. I know that there's plenty of animals. We've got palm leaves. I think we're looking at a type of kind of swampy, tropical environment. I hope you're thinking the same thing. Very different from what we found in the top layer of the cold forest right below the glaciers. Are you excited to see what's in the bottom layer and how our history has changed? Me too. All right, so now let's dig really carefully. We're going back millions and millions, almost a billion years now. Oh, wait a minute. I think we are digging back into a billion years. And we're in the Paleozoic era. And my first fossil that I did got, fossil G, is a nice cast of a seashell, isn't it? So let's put fossil G, seashell. Ooh, I'm writing the actual word she instead of seashell. And I'll put cast so that we remember that it's a cast. Let's dig some more. And pull this out. Now, when you first glance at this, maybe it reminds you of like a wasp nest or a beehive. But if you think back to some of the things I showed you last week, maybe it reminds you of this. I actually got this at the edge of Lake Barkley, in a little place that I like to go fossil hunting. And if you'll remember, that's fossilized coral. And coral grows in salt water, we know. I'm thinking we may have hit when Kentucky was covered by a sea. So let's put fossil J, but we'll need some more proof, won't we? Fossil J, coral, and we had molds and casts of the coral. There was a lot of coral too, wasn't it? That was pretty cool. I'm gonna dig some more. And I find this fossil right here. Look at it for a minute. Looks like it has a shell, doesn't it? Maybe like a turtle a little bit. It reminds me of horseshoe crabs that I see in the ocean nowadays. And this animal is actually related to the horseshoe crab, but it's called a trilobite. And they were in the oceans and seas millions of years ago on the earth. A very common animal to find there. So this is fossil D. So it's right here in this bottom layer. Fossil D is a trilobite, which is a lot like, what did we say, the horseshoe crab. Okay, dig some more. And I find some more trilobites, which is really showing me that I must be in a sea. So this is fossil M, and I can see 1, 2. Fossil M, 2 trilobites. So at this point, I think I am ready to assume that we are covered, that this environment was some sort of sea. It's definitely salt water. Boy, fossils really can tell us about what Earth's past was like. It's pretty cool to think that millions of years ago, where we're standing now was once covered by a sea. I hope you enjoy fossils. I hope you get outside and are able to find some on your own. I love you all, and I hope you enjoyed this fossil dig. I can't wait to see you all. Bye.